All right, guys, welcome back. Well, it is just after the middle of March. We had a really late freeze for here this year, so that means that from here on out, the weather just goes downhill and gets worse every day until sometime in November, where the temperatures start to get being more human, habitable temperatures. So, yeah, from here on out, I'm going to get really angry and frustrated as the temperatures start going up. But so that's just the way it is. Now, last time we did the suspension system. I do have another item I want to add to that. I have a design I got to work on. I got a couple different ways I want to do it, so I'm not sure what I want to do. So for right now, I'm going to go back to working on body work right now. I've been doing some of the filler work and sanding and some of the stuff that's up on the roof. It just takes me a long time and takes me longer than the average person just because it's harder for me to do those, concave, outer, compound, concave, convex, yeah, convex, that's outer, curves and get them to be decent and feel right. So where I'm at now is I'm working on seam sealer because I've got it and I want to do it and something I need to get out of the way. I already did a lot of the stuff under the car. I did not do a lot of the stuff at the top of the car. And I went ahead and I was going to do this thing where I'm going to do this side of the car and say, have it done. And this side, I was just going to leave it as is. Well, I went ahead and started working on the one side, and I'm not happy with the way it's turning out. That happens. Now, the stuff that they used between on all the exterior joints and any of the joints, to be honest, whatever seam sealer they used at the factory is not available today. The stuff they used was kind of like a silly putty or a clay, half that and half seam sealer mixture of stuff. It was a very heavy bodied stuff, so it was just a different consistency, and it's just not available anymore. Now we get stuff that is more like caulking. To be honest, it's more like types of caulking. It doesn't have that heavy, a lot of solids in it. That kind of feels like clay in it. We just can't get that stuff anymore. So a lot of people will just use plain old seam sealer in those places. It's hit or miss, and my problem is I'll get it on. You can tape it off and do that, and you'll wipe it off, and like sometimes it'll just turn out perfect. Other times, no, it doesn't turn out perfect. Your tape is off or something. It just doesn't smooth out well. And the problem is you have such a short open time, working time on a lot of these seam sealers that basically you get one wipe or so, and after that it just becomes really tacky and is very hard to spread around. It just doesn't do what you want. Now, a lot of people will use wax and grease remover, put a little bit of that on there and go across it. But, and then I've heard horror stories from guys that have done that and say, yeah, I've been doing it forever. I do this, I smoothed it out. It came out beautiful. Went back to paint, and a little while later they find out, oh, that wax and grease remover soaked into the seam sealer, and eventually it caused it not to cure, come back out. So that's a little bit of an issue too. So something to keep in mind. So I've got a test pieces here that I've got two different kinds of seam sealer. One is just a standard seam sealer. To be honest, if it's a one-part seam sealer, I don't care whose you buy. They all seem to be exactly the same. It doesn't matter who you buy. They smell the same, they work the same, they dry the same. Just there's white ones, there's gray ones, there's black ones. Yeah, pick what you want. And I have another seam sealer here that that is a older style one that actually one of the suppliers didn't even have it because they just don't carry that old stuff anymore. The other one did have, and I'm going to show you what both of those look like here because they are a little different. Okay, now I've got these two seam sealers. This white stuff is a standard seam sealer. This gray stuff is the old-fashioned 3M, get really close there, 3M heavy drip check, and there is the 3M part number. This stuff has been used for umpteen years, since the beginning of cars, probably from the Flintstones. Now, the difference being is, I'm not sure what, you probably see this one better. But as you can see, this is, it probably can't see, but it's a little squishy. This stuff comes out a little squishy, and it basically, that's the way it came out when I squeezed it out. you come over to this one over here, you can see there's a little divot in there. Well, this stuff is a little different. This is a little bit harder, has a little nicer, smoother finish. What this does, this is the 3M on the right. What this does is, when you put it on and you put it into a groove, so you put it on flush or a little bit proud, and what'll happen is, as it dries, it will shrink and die back and cause a slight little curve and smooth itself out on its own. This here, it is what it is. When you put it on there, that's what you got. So I'm gonna go over to the car and take a look at this. All right, now we're over here at the car. Ignore the fact that I suck at body work and I break through the epoxy, but you know, that's just the way it is. It's not my thing. Now, I did this and I did a horrible job of getting the tape into where I wanted it to be. The tape was way too far out here, and I'm not counting that, I'm not happy with the way it filled that gap. Now, the factory filler that they used almost makes this flush because it has a heavy consistency. Now, I don't know what I would use today to do that, to get even close, to have something that's heavy enough and still flexible that is not going to crack. So I'm not happy with that. That's coming out. And that's just what you do. If you don't like it, tear it out. Now, I also did this back up in here, and you know, I could tune that up a little bit and make that doable. I will see how I like that or not. But what I'm going to do, turn around and look at me, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this other side up, and we're going to try out the 3M stuff on there. And it's traditionally used like in the drip rails, stuff like that. I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's drip rails over there. But it's traditionally used in that kind of area. Anything that's on the exterior of the car that is seen, that's just what it was used for years ago. Whereas the normal seam sealer was used everywhere you couldn't see it. And now we're kind of at a loss for materials these days, because we have some great materials, but there are some things that cars don't have, and cars don't have these little, you know, seam lines and stuff anymore. So they don't make new materials for that because cars don't have that. So I'm going to get over here and we're going to set up, and we're going to do this with the 3M stuff and see how it turns out. Okay, well, I'm back here at the back of the car. I am going only going to not learn how to speak and know how to speak, but I'll try. But I'm going to only do this little section right here. Now, this section here, while I've been working on the car, I've had tape over top of this. Now, I've already wiped this off once to get the tape residue off, because you want to tape it up, because any little dirt and gunk and sand and any kind of stuff you've got flying around will get down in there, and you don't want anything in there if you can help it. So what I also have is a El Cheapo feeler gauge. I bought sets of these years ago for like $1 a set at Tractor Supply when they're on clearance, or maybe less than that. And I've modified it with a little hook on the end. And what I do with this is I use this, and I just come in here and I just try to hook anything that might catch, or, you know, because I do some abrasive blasting, there might be some grit around here. And you still may have something fall in there just because it's here. And you can just run this through here and clean it out like that too if you want. And then blow it out. And then the really simple Scotch-Brite. Rough it up with Scotch-Brite. And you just want to rough up kind of down into there. Get down in there. Just kind of do the whole area, because eventually you're going to have to do this to the whole car anyway to get another coat of, if you want to put another coat of epoxy, if you wanted to, you know, put another coat of epoxy on, you could go for that. Or if you scuff the entire car up and went with 2K, you can go with that too. Just depends on how much you scratched it up while you were, you know, in the middle of working on the car. You know, if you beat it up a lot, yeah, go ahead and knock it down a decent amount and then put another coat of epoxy on if you want to. It's your call. So I've got that roughed up. I'm going to knock that off a little bit more, get the dust off. Now I'm going to take some horrible rags, And if you guys have bought rags in a box recently, they suck. This is what classifies as rags in a box now. And I don't know if you can or not, but you can see through these things. These rags in the box used to be nice, fluffy, just really good, really good rags. Now they're thin, they're tough, they're not very absorbent because they're not the nice, thick, fluffy. I'm in the point where I'm looking at estate sales to try to find old boxes of rags in the box because they were so much better. So if anybody's got a solution to that, where somebody else is making a product that's like the old rags in the box, and that's the Scott brand stuff that I use, the old Scott brand rags in the box. Those things were great. I mean, they were just so nice. But if you know something that's better than what they're selling now, let me know. So all I'll do is take one of those, take some wax and grease remover, and I will take another clean one too, and because I want to get the rest of the dust off of there. I can sometimes be a little overkill on that, and it's like anything else. You want to clean it with wet, throw that on your phone, that's not good, and then clean it with something dry, and that way you're pulling everything off. And like prepping for paint, you keep going till it's clean. So, you see there's absolutely nothing on there. Now the thing is, I want to tape that off and I want to put stuff on it. But this wax and grease remover, in my climate, for some reason, it's like mineral spirits. It takes forever to dry. So I'm going to turn the camera off. I want to run some air over this. I'm going to go in and grab something for lunch. Hopefully come back out here and it will be ready to tape up and put some seam sealer on it. And if you can see it in the camera, there's some idiot that welded the quarter panel on, left some really nasty globs over here that they epoxy primed over top of. You need to fire that guy. You did a bad job on that. Okay, well, got this taped off. Couldn't see what I was doing, so I had to get another light out. If you guys don't have any lights like these, get one. This is my second one of these. This is the newer style. These things from Harbor Freight. The other one was just a straight. It would just go 90 degrees. You just do that. This one folds all the way around, which is really kind of cool. Oh, just noticed it does a double thing. Oh, that's cool. Didn't know that. But my other one, I don't know where it is, but these things, they stick. I was working underneath the Sereno when I was putting the airbags inside the springs, and I was working underneath there. I had it stuck up under there. A week later, I couldn't find my flashlight. Finally, I crawl underneath there. There it is, still hanging up underneath the car, and it had been there for a week. So that's pretty impressive, and it had been all over the place, and our roads are horrendously badly paved. No, don't get me wrong. If you're from this area, from DFW, it's not that our roads have potholes and things like that. It's that in Texas, they don't understand how to pave an intersection or a apron from a driveway to a road. They believe that every time that a road comes to a 90 degree with another one, that there has to be this big honking dip at every one of those intersections for some odd reason. It's a Texas thing. They just don't understand how to do it right. So, they need some training, but yeah, it was pretty bumpy stuff, with that, and it stayed on there. So I'm impressed. Okay, I'm back. I've got my sealant. Now, if you don't have one of these little things for RTV and stuff like that, it's made by Valco, the tube grip. I've had this thing forever, and it's just goes right onto your tubes just like that, and you squeeze it, and then you just kind of chomps its way down, chomp, until you're done with the tube. And so that way you don't waste any up here, and you've got something you can hold on to, and you can give it a nice steady even bead. It's kind of tricky when you first get started because it doesn't want to stay in place, but once you use up a little bit of this, it works really well. But super handy. Alright guys, well, that is as close as I can get you to actually looking at it while I do it and see how much of a mess I make, and see if I ended up doing this and tearing this out and tearing all the rest of it out at the same time. we shall see how bad this goes. And already I can tell you, this is much easier to work. This is much easier to work with. Immensely easier to work with than the standard seam sealer when it comes to spreading that in there. So I'm going to do one quick wipe here. I'm going to go ahead and peel that off, and we're going to see what it looks like. And then overnight we'll see what it looks like after it's dyed back and shrunk. And oh, does it stink bad. Well, kind of got a little too much on there. Should have squeegeed it off a little more. But I am going to leave it alone. I'm not going to... No, I'm not. I can't just leave it alone. I just can't. Well, hang on. Let me put some light on that. Okay, no touchy. No touchy. Leave it alone. Okay, well, just a quick recap. I know I talked about earlier, showed you the samples I did down here for the seam sealer. I did those for a reason. I've got the two spots at either end of the dashboard that are filled with that sealer, that mud stuff that the factory put in. Again, like I said, there's no real modern replacement for that. So I have an issue with the seam sealer because when you put it on, it gets very, very tacky. Now, that's good and bad. The problem is it sets up too fast for you to really work with it and do a nice fill in there. So what I did was did some samples here, and these ones you saw earlier. Now the purpose of this is to put it on this plastic and see if it peels off okay. The reason being is those spots at the end of the dashboard, which I call armpits because they look like armpits. They're ugly, they're shaped, they just look like armpits. So, you know, to fill in those armpits, I could just squeeze the stuff in there, and then I could sit there and try and play with tooling it. And we all know that's just not going to go well, because the more you mess with that seam sealer on there, it's going to look like little, you know, hairs coming off of it. Just not going to work well. So my thought was, if I could get enough in there, you know, kind of go back and forth, fill that area in nice and thick enough, and then come back with something like plastic, or in this case, this is parchment paper. This was one of my samples. And see if I could get it close, put that on top of it, and then let that form the shape of it, and then just let it sit. Now it's going to take longer to cure because it's sealing it, but that way it will take a shape that I want it to, and I can sit here, put this on top, and, you know, shape that plastic into it. So that's my plan, and that's what these samples are for. So let's see how that comes off. And it's okay. It did kind of leave some behind. This is just plain old the El Cheapo Ziploc bags. To be honest, that's probably almost workable. If I had an issue with that, I could probably just put a little bit of seam sealer on there and like just fill it in if I really had to. So that's a good possibility. Let's see if this other stuff actually peels off of here. Yeah, that's going to be a no. Okay. So the standard seam sealer, which in this case I'm using, this AC Delco. So if you can actually buy this at your local dealership, I've never noticed a difference between this or anybody else's. It all seems to be the same stuff with a different color in it, you know, being pooped out of the same machine at the plant somewhere, you know. So I don't see a reason to spend a ton of more money on a single part seam sealer. The single stage seam sealers, I don't see a difference between any of them, to be honest. So if you really want to make sure you've got a great seam sealer, just skip the single stage, go to one of the two component stuff. There's a lot of them out there, and a lot of them come in tubes like this now, where it's the two parts in here with the mixing tip, and that stuff comes that way, so you don't have to buy that fancy, you know, caulking gun that's got the two little things, because that little caulking gun alone is is expensive. Not to mention the seam sealer in those little tubes is, some of this stuff starts at 25 bucks a pack, you know, a pack for the cheapy low end stuff, and a lot of it's like, you know, 40, 50 bucks. It's expensive stuff. It works great, but it's expensive. You know, in a collision repair industry, you know, if you're doing that and you've got a car that's going to be out in the weather all the time, and this, fine, I get it, go for it, makes sense. But let me get back to where I was talking about. You know, the seam sealer here, and this gray stuff here is again, this is the 3M drip check, which some pretty mean stuff. It holds, it will not peel off of this plastic, so you could not use this as a, you know, a peel off type of interface on there. Now we come over here to our parchment paper, which I'm very reluctant to use parchment paper for this. Well, it's not in the camera, but you get the idea. But I'm reluctant to use parchment paper because most parchment papers are actually produced with silicone. That's why they work. So yeah, that come off piece of cake, couple tiny little spots, no biggie, and this piece is already coming off too. So parchment paper works wonderfully. The only thing I worry about is if this is a parchment paper that is made with silicone, I worry about that actually leaching into the seam sealer and becoming an issue with adhesion later on. So that's the only reason I would be hesitant on that stuff there that I can't remember the name of, I just said. But so that said, I'm going to try filling the armpits here, and like I said, if it doesn't go well, the worst thing that happens is I just grind it out and I do it again. I find another material and I do that. You know, and it's like anytime you're working on this stuff, if there's something that doesn't go the way you want it and you don't like the product you got in the end, don't think, you know, oh man, I got to live with that. No, rip it out, redo it, because if you don't do it now, you're going to regret it later. Because later on, you're going to look at it, it's like, you know, I should have just gone ahead and, yeah, you know, would have been some materials and would have been some time, but you would have been happy if you did it. But if you didn't, you're going to regret it. So yeah, if there's something you're not happy with when you're working on it, just do it over and you won't have to worry about it in the future. Okay, well, if this goes well, you will be seeing this, and you have an up-close view of how this is done. If this goes badly, nobody will ever see this. All right, guys, well, it is the next day, and after I did that, I went ahead and did more seam sealing of areas that, you know, I missed. And it's using up the rest of a tube. Didn't have enough to do everything, but just using up a tube. But I'll come back over here to see how this turned out. And as you can see, I'm happy with that. That turned out pretty good here. This turned out good. It was easy to do, so much better than, let's just rotate this around to that mess right there. It may not look that bad on camera, but in person, I'm definitely not happy with it. So I'm going to remove that and redo that with that gray stuff, with the gray 3M stuff. And also, as I rotate the car around here, this one over here, I'm going to rip this out. That looks like horse pucky. So that's coming out. Everything that's being done on the outside that's a visible seam is going to be getting that 3M stuff. Yeah, everybody needs a rotisserie. See how easy that is? Effortless. All right, so, as you see, things don't always turn out the way you want. And I have used this exact stuff to do like roof rails before. I've used two-part stuff to do roof rails as well. I don't remember what I used exactly. I don't remember how I did it. It's been a long time. But I've used that kind of stuff. And to be honest, the one-part stuff is fine for what I'm going to do. The car's not going to be out in the weather all the time. This is not like a normal production car and you're going to drive it all the time. This thing's going to be baby inside most of the time. It rains, 3 or 4 times during the year here. So to be honest, if you didn't seam seal anything, who cares? You're not going to be driving through the rain here anyway. So that being said, that's not a big deal. So, for things that aren't going to be seen, the one parts are fine. If it's a visible seam, go with something like this, the 3M Drip Check 08531. This stuff works nicer. It's a better stuff to use. This stuff stinks. This is horrendously stinky, as in, to be honest, it smells worse than a lot of the paints that you're going to use. This stuff smells really bad. When I came back out here to the shop this morning, after I put a bunch more of this on the car yesterday, it was the point I couldn't stand the smell anymore. It was just that bad. It was that strong. So I had to get out of here. But they both stink. This is bad. This is horrible. But I figure, in general, if it smells really bad, it probably works well. So, now price-wise, this stuff, you can get this stuff right now. I think it's actually on sale for like $10 a tube, which that's what seam sealer should be. There's another brand that I've used as well. It usually comes in black from the paint supplier. Some guys company up in Oklahoma. They have a couple stores up there. Awesome store up in Oklahoma City. And the best part is they come down to our swap meets. They bring a selection of stuff. If you want other stuff, they'll bring it with you. Fair pricing. Maybe one of these days I'll get up there and actually be able to. I've been in the store, but I didn't ask the videotape because I didn't want to do that. But I'll ask him next time, because it has a nice big selection of stuff and everything has a price written on it. There's none of the how much is this, how much is that, and trying to figure out what you want to use. And so it's a really nice place, really, really nice people. That said, like I said, this stuff, $10. Normally it's going to be about $15. So there's a couple other brands in the same ballpark. There's some other ones that are a lot more expensive. I've used them and I don't notice any difference whatsoever. Seems like the same stuff in a tube. Just it's white, it's gray, it's black, whatever. This, $20 a tube, is the best price you're going to find. And actually Amazon has the best price for it. Locally, this was about $21. Now, obviously, you're getting a whole lot more for your money over here. This stuff here, it works better. It's just a better product. It really is. For what it's intended for, it does what it's supposed to. This is a stopgap when you're using this in these kind of applications. So you got visible seams on the outside of the car, roof rails, stuff like that. Go with something more like this. Or if you can find a two-part seam sealer that you're happy with, that your body guy says, hey, use this, use it. But this is just me. This is what I'm using. This is what I'm doing. So, it's your car. You do your car, I'll do mine. So that's about all I've got for right now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tear out all that stuff I don't like. I'm going to tear it out and put this stuff in here. Actually, I'm going to tear it out, epoxy prime it. What I mess up, because I'm going to be taking back the bare steel, I'll epoxy prime it, put this on, and then I'll be done with that. I'll do a little bit more Bondo work here and there, the things I've missed. I'm sorry, filler work. It's not Bondo. Do not use Bondo. Use better stuff. But I will get into that, and that might be in the next video. I do have this hankering that I want to paint the dash. Kind of want to, just for some reason, I just want to paint it and get it done. Just want to, and that way you guys can actually see what color it's going to be. It's going to be more than one color inside the car, so it's going to be a little different. So I appreciate you watching, and for subscribing. I really appreciate that too. And we'll see you on the next one.